Most people, when they imagine the most dangerous jobs in the Navy, picture something dramatic and obvious. Maybe a diver handling explosives deep underwater, or a SEAL team sneaking into enemy territory. Others might say the pilots, strapping themselves into fighter jets, pushing their bodies and machines to the limits, risking enemy fire and mechanical failure. And while those jobs are undeniably dangerous, they aren't the deadliest. The true peril, the kind that lurks every single day, exists in a place most people barely give a second thought: the flight deck of a U.S. aircraft carrier. It doesn't matter if you're looking at a carrier from a distance or standing right on top of it, the scale is overwhelming. A floating airbase, longer than 3 football fields, wider than a city block, stacked with thousands of sailors and enough aircraft to rival a small nation's air force. But up on the top deck, where the jets actually launch and land, it's another world entirely. Sailors call it the most dangerous 4.5 acres on Earth, and they're not exaggerating. Out here, danger isn't some abstract idea. It's constant, immediate, and merciless. Picture it. The sun is barely up, the sea air is already heavy with jet fuel, and the deck hums like it's alive. Every few seconds, a jet engine roars so loud it rattles the bones. Blast waves from afterburners sweep across the deck, throwing up salt spray and nearly knocking people off balance. Steel arresting cables stretch and snap with a force strong enough to cut a man in half. Propellers spin invisible blades of death, and towering aircraft, each weighing tens of thousands of pounds, roll past sailors who stand just inches away. There are no guardrails, no safety nets, just raw steel, rushing wind, and the endless ocean waiting on every side. To someone watching from the outside, it might look like chaos planes taxiing in every direction, sailors sprinting across the deck, colored jerseys darting in and out of danger. But for the men and women who work here, it's no chaos at all. It's choreography. Every hand signal, every whistle, every motion is part of a routine that has to be flawless. Because here, the smallest mistake doesn't just cost money, it costs lives. And yet, that's what makes the job so remarkable. These sailors, some barely out of high school, step onto that deck knowing exactly what it demands of them. They work in conditions that are loud, blinding, blistering hot in the day and freezing at night, all while surrounded by hazards that never take a break. There's no pause button, no chance to catch your breath, no room for doubt. Out here, you're either sharp or you're a statistic. This is the world most people never hear about. It isn't glamorous like the pilot's cockpit, and it doesn't make for Hollywood blockbusters. But for those who live it, the flight deck is the definition of danger. And the people who tame it, the yellow shirts directing jets, the green shirts running catapults, the red shirts handling ordnance, they're the ones carrying the Navy's air power on their shoulders. This is their story, the deadliest job on a U.S. carrier you've probably never heard of. When people first step onto the deck of a U.S. carrier, the sheer scale of it catches them off guard. It isn't just another Navy vessel, it's a city at sea, with its own rhythms, its own rules, and its own danger. Below decks, sailors might be eating in the galley, working on engines, or sleeping in cramped racks. But topside, everything changes. The flight deck is where the Navy's power becomes visible. It's where the promise of air superiority meets the raw physics of steel, jet fuel, and salt water. But before we dive into what actually makes this job so lethal, it's worth understanding what the flight deck really is. At its simplest, it's just a flat, armored surface. But in practice, it functions as a combination of a runway, a launch pad, a weapons platform, and a battlefield all rolled into one. On land, a runway might stretch for miles, giving pilots plenty of room to accelerate, land, or abort. Out here, the space is brutally limited. Pilots don't have thousands of feet of asphalt, they have just enough deck to either get airborne or smash into the ocean. And the sailors working the deck? They're the ones who make sure that thin line between success and disaster holds every single day. The heart of the deck's operation comes down to 2 things: launching and recovering aircraft. Each one is a high-stakes event. To launch, an aircraft is hooked into a catapult, a massive steam or electromagnetic system that hurls a 60 zero-pound jet from 0 to 160 miles per hour in just over 2 seconds. It's violent, it's precise, and it's absolutely unforgiving. A single miscalculation, whether from the crew on deck or the pilot in the cockpit, can end in catastrophe. And if launching sounds dangerous, landing is even worse. Unlike a pilot approaching a wide, calm runway, a carrier landing means aiming a jet at a moving target, no wider than a side street, pitching and rolling with the waves in crosswinds that would ground most civilian flights. To make it work, 4 arresting cables stretch across the deck, each designed to snag the tailhook of the incoming jet and bring it from combat speed to a full stop in just a couple hundred feet. For the crew, that means standing just yards away from a machine hurtling toward them at terminal velocity, with nothing but timing and training keeping it from plowing into the deck. And all of this is happening not in calm silence, but in sensory overload. Imagine the noise, the unending howl of turbines, the bone-shaking boom of catapults firing, the metallic crack of arresting cables whipping back into place. Imagine the heat, exhaust plumes blasting across the deck at hundreds of degrees, hot enough to blister skin through protective gear. Imagine the smell. Salt air mixed with jet fuel, hydraulic fluid, and the sharp bite of ozone. The deck is a living, breathing monster, and the sailors working it are the ones keeping it tamed. But they don't face this danger blindly. Every sailor on deck belongs to a highly specialized crew, and you can tell who's who by the color of the jersey they wear. The yellow shirts are the directors, the traffic controllers of the deck, guiding jets into place with precise hand signals. The green shirts keep the catapults and arresting gear running, crawling under machinery that could crush them if it shifts at the wrong time. The red shirts handle the most volatile job of all, loading live ordnance, missiles, and bombs under roaring engines and spinning blades. Blue shirts move gear and aircraft, while purple shirts keep the fuel flowing, managing hoses that could become flamethrowers if a single spark sets them off. It's a color-coded dance, and every role matters. If one person fails to do their job, the chain of safety snaps instantly, and unlike other Navy assignments, there's no margin for error here. A dropped wrench can get sucked into a jet intake, shredding an engine mid-flight. A single misheard command can send an aircraft veering into another. One moment of distraction can mean someone disappears under a wheel, a wing, or worse, over the edge of the deck into the endless black of the ocean. This is the context most people miss when they hear the phrase carrier operations. It's not just planes coming and going. It's human beings working shoulder to shoulder with machinery that doesn't forgive mistakes. Every launch, every landing, every refuel, every weapon load is a gamble against time, physics, and the sea. And for the young sailors who stand out there day after day, it's more than a job. It's survival. The longer someone watches flight operations on a carrier, the clearer it becomes that the deck is less like a workplace and more like a living, breathing organism. Every sailor moves with purpose, and every motion is connected to someone else's. The color of each jersey signals a different responsibility. Yellow shirts marshal the jets into position. Green shirts operate catapults and arresting gear. Red shirts handle ordnance. Purple shirts refuel aircraft. Each group is a cog in a massive machine, and if one cog slips, the entire system is at risk. This is where the danger really comes into focus. Imagine standing just a few feet from an F/A-18 Hornet as its engines throttle up to maximum power. The heat is searing, the noise deafening, and the exhaust powerful enough to knock a grown man flat. At the same time, on the opposite end of the deck, another jet is slamming onto the flight line, a tailhook grabbing one of the arresting cables stretched across the deck. Those cables, as thick as a man's wrist, can stop a 40 zero-pound aircraft in seconds, but if one snaps, it can slice through anything in its path like a whip. Sailors who've worked the deck long enough all have stories of close calls. Some remember feeling the sting of jet blast knocking them sideways. Others recall scrambling out of the way of rolling wheels or skidding cables. None of these things make headlines, but among the crew, the stories travel quickly. Each one serves as a reminder: stay sharp or you won't last long up here. Then there's the weather. Unlike an airfield on land, the carrier deck doesn't get a rain delay. Operations continue in blistering heat, in torrential downpours, and even during pitch-black nights when the only light comes from glowing wands and deck lighting. Visibility can drop to almost nothing, yet launches and recovery still happen with the same pace and urgency. The sea itself adds to the chaos waves, rocking the ship, winds cutting across the deck, salt spray coating everything. And through all of it, the crew must perform their jobs with the same precision as if it were a calm, sunny day. There's also no escape from the grind. Carrier operations don't pause because someone is exhausted. Launch cycles can go on for hours, sometimes stretching well into the night. Deck crews work in rotating shifts, but rest often means just enough time to catch a quick meal and maybe a few hours of sleep before being called back up. Fatigue sets in fast, and when the body grows tired, the margin for error shrinks dangerously. Yet these sailors keep showing up, because the mission demands it. What most people don't realize is how young many of these sailors are. The average deckhand is barely out of high school. One day they were flipping burgers or sitting in math class, and the next they're standing on steel surrounded by roaring jets, responsible for guiding millions of dollars worth of aircraft in some of the most hazardous conditions imaginable. It's trial by fire, and the ones who make it through become some of the most seasoned, disciplined workers in the Navy. As intense as all this sounds, it's not even the full picture. The real stakes aren't just the danger to individual sailors. They're the success of the carrier itself. Every mission, every sortie, every strike depends on the deck crew doing their job flawlessly. Pilots might get the glory, but without the sailors on deck, the planes don't move. And if the planes don't move, the carrier is just a floating hunk of steel. The weight of that responsibility hangs over every decision, every motion, every wave of a hand on the flight deck. Every deployment has that one moment when the deck seems to tilt from controlled chaos into something almost unmanageable. For some carriers, it's during combat sorties when the tempo ramps up and planes cycle in and out with barely a breath between them. For others, it happens during the dark hours before dawn, when fatigue dulls senses, and yet the deck is still alive with machines capable of killing in an instant. No matter when it comes, that moment becomes burned into the memory of everyone who was there. Picture the scene. The ship is pitching in heavy seas, the deck slick with rain, and the wind is howling across the bow at nearly 40 knots. A hornet is lined up on the catapult, engines screaming so loud it feels like the steel underfoot is vibrating. Yellow shirts are signaling, hands cutting the air with practiced precision. On the landing area, another jet is moments away from touching down, tailhook ready to snare the wire. Everyone is moving at once, marshalling, fueling, arming, securing. The noise, the motion, the raw power, it all collides into one blinding instant. Then, something goes wrong. Maybe a piece of gear doesn't respond as it should. Maybe a pilot comes in too hot on approach. Maybe a loose tool, something as small as a wrench, gets sucked toward an intake. Whatever it is, the atmosphere changes in an instant. You can feel it in the air. The shift from routine intensity to sheer danger. Every sailor freezes for a fraction of a second, instinctively aware that this is no longer just about efficiency, it's about survival. This is the razor's edge they all live on. The difference between a launch that goes off without a hitch and a catastrophe that ends lives can be measured in seconds. In these moments, training takes over. A green shirt dives for the arresting gear to make sure it's clear. A purple shirt hauling a fuel line ducks just out of the jet blast. A yellow shirt waves his arms frantically to redirect motion before a collision happens. Each movement is precise, drilled into them through endless repetition, yet charged with the knowledge that one mistake could turn the entire deck into an inferno. The climax of flight deck life isn't just one dramatic explosion or a single near disaster. It's the constant reality that those things could happen at any second. Every launch cycle is a gamble with enormous stakes. Machines worth tens of millions of dollars, pilots trusting the crew with their lives, and a mission that the entire strike group depends on. That pressure is what makes the deck feel like a battlefield even in peacetime. And yet, perhaps the most striking part of all is not the danger itself, but the way the crew responds to it. In the face of roaring engines, whipping cables, and blinding storms, they do not panic. They tighten their movements, trust their training, and rely on one another. They operate on instinct, but it's an instinct forged by hours of drills, by hard lessons, by the unshakable knowledge that their ship cannot function without them. On the deck of a carrier, the climax isn't just a single dramatic scene. It's a way of life. It's the moment-by-moment reality of working in one of the most dangerous jobs in the world and refusing to be intimidated by it. Because up here, hesitation kills, confidence saves, and every sailor knows which side of that equation they have to live on. When the flight deck finally quiets, when the last aircraft has either launched or been chained down for the night, there's a strange silence that settles over the steel. It isn't the silence of peace. Not exactly, more like the silence that follows a storm, when the echoes of thunder still linger in the mind, even though the skies have cleared. Sailors look out over the deck, lit by the faint glow of red lights, and know that for another cycle at least, they have done their jobs. No lives were lost. No fire broke out. The ship is intact, and the mission continues. It's in these moments that the weight of what they do truly sinks in. On the deck, there is no time to think, no room for fear or hesitation. But afterward, when the adrenaline fades, a sailor might find themselves standing at the edge of the deck, looking out into the vast darkness of the sea, realizing just how thin the line is between order and chaos. Some carry scars from near misses, stories they'll never forget. Others simply feel gratitude that the crew around them knew exactly what to do when seconds mattered. Reflection also comes in the form of trust. Every sailor knows that they are part of a living system, one where each person's actions protect the others. A green shirt tightening a chain isn't just securing a jet, he's safeguarding the lives of his shipmates. A yellow shirt waving signals isn't just guiding a pilot, he's ensuring that an aircraft worth millions and a man or woman in the cockpit makes it safely into the air. This knowledge weaves the crew together into something stronger than just a workforce. It makes them a family forged by fire, steel, and the sea. And perhaps that is the true power of the flight deck. It teaches humility in the face of immense machinery, courage in the face of danger, and faith in one's shipmates. Sailors who work the deck carry those lessons for the rest of their lives. They know what it means to stay calm under pressure, to act decisively when chaos looms, and to trust that someone has their back even when they can't see them through the smoke or noise. For outsiders, it might seem almost impossible to understand why anyone would willingly step into such a dangerous environment day after day. But for those who live it, the answer is simple. They are part of something larger than themselves. Every launch and recovery is a small piece of a mission that extends far beyond the deck. It's about protecting allies, deterring enemies, and ensuring that the oceans remain open for all. The danger isn't just endured, it's accepted, even embraced, because it serves a purpose far greater than personal safety or comfort. In the quiet hours, when the deck is finally still and only the hum of the ocean surrounds them, sailors reflect not on the danger, but on the pride of having done their duty. They know the cycle will begin again soon, with all its noise, heat, and risk. But for now, they breathe deeply, they rest, and they hold on to the knowledge that they are part of one of the most extraordinary operations ever devised by humankind. In the end, The flight deck of a U.S. Navy aircraft carrier is more than just a strip of steel in the middle of the ocean. It is a stage where some of the most disciplined men and women in the world perform an unending ballet of precision and danger. It is a place where seconds decide outcomes, where the roar of engines and the crash of waves merge into a single, unforgettable soundscape. And for the sailors who live it, the deck becomes something more personal, a place that tests them, changes them, and ultimately defines them. The dangers are always present, and no one who has walked that deck under the searing sun or freezing rain would ever deny it. Yet, those dangers do not exist in vain. They are endured for the sake of a mission that extends far beyond the ship itself. Every jet that thunders into the sky carries not only weapons and technology, but also the promise of security, the assurance of presence, and the strength of deterrence. Every safe landing is a reminder that human skill, courage, and teamwork can tame even the most unforgiving environments. For those who have never been there, it is easy to see only the machines, the massive carrier itself, the sleek jets, the catapults, and arresting cables. But the heart of the flight deck isn't steel or jet fuel. It is the sailors, young men and women, often barely out of high school, who learn to operate under the kind of pressure most people will never know. They come from every corner of America, from small towns and cities, from farms and suburbs, carrying with them the stories of their families and communities. And on the deck, they become something greater than individuals. They become guardians of one another, custodians of an operation whose scale few can comprehend. When their service ends, many sailors carry the memory of the deck with them forever. They remember the heat, the noise, the exhaustion, but most of all, they remember the trust, the camaraderie, and the knowledge that they stood at the edge of the sea and helped launch power across the skies. They know that what they did mattered, not just for their ship, but for their nation, and for the fragile balance of peace across the world. So, the next time you see a carrier on the news, or watch a jet streak across the sky, remember the unseen stage from which it came. Remember the sailors in colored jerseys, braving noise, wind, and fire, each one playing a role in a drama that unfolds daily on steel no wider than a city street. Remember that behind every launch and every recovery is a story of human skill, courage, and sacrifice. The flight deck will always be dangerous. It will always demand the best of those who serve on it. But in that danger lies something profound, a reminder of what people are capable of when united by purpose, discipline, and trust. And in the end, that is what makes the U.S. Navy's flight deck not just one of the most dangerous workplaces in the world, but one of the most extraordinary.